You're watching Exaba's Chernobyl.
Hope that answers your question.
Hey, my dear, welcome to your Monster Monthly. But every monster has a month. But this month is about the Cyclops. You'll keep an eye on yourself.
We want Cyclops. Go get the Monster Mania.
Well, we're gonna see. But this month, we're talking about the Cyclops. Mysterious actual origins explained. So, let's get started. Here we go with month 1. On January 2023, it's gotta be yourself. Like this month, right? Okay, let's get started. Action!
Crypt is mythic, fantasy, and sci-fi. We are everything monster.
Just cleaning the old table here, it's served me well for years. But alas, the xenomorphic termites have gotten
Every
to it.
monster had
But
its
don't
own.
worry, they're just called
Yep,
that.
the
They're harmless.
Monster Mania.
Well, for the most part. Now, this is much better.
You're glad to
Combining
see
the
the
craftsmanship
world
of
of monsters.
elves and dwarves
Still
yields
gotta
remarkable
keep
results.
on this
Just don't let
action.
them know you're working with the
I know
other.
what their
And
situation's
finding
coming
a
from.
dragon carcass was no easy feat either. Before we dive headfirst into where the earliest conceptions of a cycloptic monster actually hail from, spoiler, it may be older than ancient Greece itself.
Yeah.
I have to shout out our first ever 5 patrons as they mark the start of a new era of World of Monsters. Thank you Kristian, Toby Larone, Brianna Spears, Braincrawler, Dante Cofield. You are amazing monsterites that will never be forgotten. And if you want to see the awesome tiers and goals of the army, check out our Patreon. It's all right on the front page there. And now, I know this monster is long overdue. Cyclops, we honorably welcome thee.
Still got an eye. Oh, that's Cyclops.
Okay, you're
I'm
about to
assuming
see
you've
this.
heard of or caught hints of the Greek background to the Cyclops.
I know
and if
about
you
that,
haven't,
Mike
we'll get to
Wazowski.
that too.
But
in
let's take a look
moment.
at this.
Because you see, that is
What?
not necessarily
I
the
have to
farthest back
see
in time
this.
we can discover the
I
Cyclops.
have no idea
Enter the
what's in
Isin
an
Larsa
eye coming
period,
from.
circa 1961 to 1699, before
Stairs
Common
get
Era.
a little
We
bit
find
too
ourselves in the
bad, I got
Kavaja
like
temple
rip
near the
me
Diyala
fortune,
River on the eastern outskirts of modern-day
I
Baghdad,
have no
Iraq.
reservation,
On the
mate.
wall there is a terracotta relief depicting a warrior slashing at a curious figure with a pointy, single-eyed head. Henry Frankfurt, the director of the excavations at the temple, admitted they did not know of who these representations were, though in 1936 proposed that the monoculus, monos meaning alone or only, and
still got
oculus
alone.
meaning eye,
Is that
was
a
a
mono
fire
is an
demon
eye?
due to what appeared as sun rays
One-eyed
radiating from its head.
giant.
Henry was possibly the
That's an
first
eye
to
on that
identify the
keeper's
being as a
coming from.
precursor to the famed Greek
still a little
Cyclops
bit
creation
action.
of a much later era. Eventually, archaeologist Yigil Yadin pointed out the similarity of the scene in the plaque to a Babylonian poem of creation, recognizing it as Marduk, Babylonian king of
But
gods,
it's still
killing
Marduk.
Tiamat, a sea goddess.
But
As
I
other theories
still
came to
take a
pass,
look
rejections also
for
arose,
an eye
proposing that the
action.
seemingly cycloptic
I know
feature is a
seriously
gaping
have a good
wound
idea for my
rather
eye.
than an eye. Then came Rene Labat, who, through rigorous research of Babylonian diviner tablets, discovered relationships between ancient Sumerian terms and Akkadian words that would translate into monoculous.
Oh,
the text within
but
read of the
how
god of war and
ridiculous for this
pestilence,
one?
Nurgle, slaying
Let me take a little action.
Igitela, when digging deeper into the phonetic differences between the two languages, logically matched Igidili and Igidilu,
I've never
which
seen
define
this.
as monoculous. Therefore, the Sealand Dynasty tablet has revealed the story
Yep.
of Nurgle defeating a
That
one-eyed being, a
is
monoculous.
so uniqueable.
Cyclops. The
Give me the
mystery
reason
of
I
whether
have
this
a good
monster
idea
was
about
part
this.
of a race or an individual
some
entity
action,
is still
would you?
unclear. But even though the time gap between
Oh,
the modeling of this
okay.
intriguing
But I
Babylonian
have the
relief
reason
and
I'm talking to?
fabrication of the Greek
Where's an
Cyclops may
eye?
seem like 1,000
There's
years,
an eyeball.
we now have knowledge that transmission of written scholarship to eastern coasts of the Mediterranean were quite active throughout this time. Hence, it is very likely that the Cyclops of Greece did in fact have a Near Eastern, or as designated today, a Middle Eastern ancestor. For details on the study, look up Nurgle and a Babylonian Cyclops, an article written by Andrew George of the University of London, published within the 69th Journal of the Bibliotheca Orientalis.
Hey,
The Greek Cyclops
do I
concept
need to
certainly
keep
may
an
have been
eye on the
inspired by the
Cyclops?
Mesopotamian
But no
vernacular,
matter
although
what this
would it
is,
have really been that far-fetched of
I
an original
have no
conception,
issues
considering the other
what this guy's
monstrosities that
coming
emerged from the rising
I
civilization?
have no.
That really
reasons
does bring
about
to
that,
mind
mate.
just how many of the
Well,
monsters
it's the
were
Greek mythology on
genuinely
Turanga.
original. Cyclops,
I
deriving from
have an
Greek
eye
to
on
Latin, kuklos,
situations.
meaning circle, and ops, meaning eye, Cyclops or Cyclops, being the equivalent of circle or round eye.
Okay.
Cyclopes, plural.
Cyclopes.
The ES, probably added after the Cyclops word, worked its way into French, Italian, and Spanish, where
Yep.
the S was replaced by an E,
That's a Cyclops.
Cyclope. When
It's
it
a
comes to the
Cyclope.
Cyclops of Greece, we are greeted with a couple notable variations that inspired further works, one of Hesiod and the other of Homer. It's still debated to this day which came first, as both Homer and Hesiod lived within the same
Yep.
time frame.
I'd
So
always do
alphabetically,
an
let's
eye.
begin with the Cyclopes of
Hey.
Hesiod's poetry and theogony. Argus,
Well,
meaning
still
bright,
got a lot of words
Brontes,
to do it then.
thunder, and Steropes, lightning, were divine blacksmiths and among the first gods within the mythology, for they were the sons of Uranus, god of sky, and Gaia, goddess of the earth, and brothers to the 100-handed giants, the Hecatoncheires, and younger brothers of the great Titans. The three enormous single-eyed brothers were very powerful beings.
Whoa,
and like
that's
the
a lot of
Minotaur,
heads. That seriously gets out of control of it.
were brought into quite
It bugs
an
me another
unfortunate
monster's coming by.
existence. The father kept all the brothers imprisoned within their mother's belly, the depths of the earth, as he felt much hatred for the monstrous children.
Yep.
Encouraged by his mother,
Still got a
youngest of
monsters
the
coming
Titans, Cronus, was joined by the Cyclopes to overthrow Uranus. Upon victory, Cronus turned on his brothers in fear of their might and imprisoned them along with their younger, many-handed brothers in the Greek underworld of Tartarus, where they worked under Hephaestus, the patron god of all artisans, craftsmen, and artists alike, in his forge under volcanic Mount Etna. Campi was a female human reptilian monster that was assigned to forever guard the entrance against any escape of the Forsaken Brothers. Let's pause here. This is the story or part of a compilation you may have found online, where you see
Still gonna
Greek
remain with
mythology
this.
is a fickle beast. It's so old and all over the place that the summaries you
I
often read
know
nowadays
what
are
is
inaccurate
gonna
or
be here
compositions
tonight,
involving parts from many writers and storytellers into one usually more entertaining piece. Therefore, here is the rest of Hesiod's tale, summarized but as true to his poem as I could find. Having the brothers entombed, Cronus now proclaimed himself ruler of the gods, and with a growing anxiety of having his power put at risk, swallowed his children whole as soon as they were born to imprison them within. Eventually tired of
Well,
losing her
they're
children,
swallowing all
Cronus
the
was tricked by his
souls.
wife Rhea, and their son Zeus was spared, as instead Cronus swallowed a clothed stone. This great son of Cronus himself eventually grew up and forced his father to guard out the brothers. Note, gods were often imprisoned like so due to their immortal nature. They just could not be killed. Once free, the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheir brothers rebelled against their Titan siblings. With Zeus in the lead, and in gratitude, the Cyclopes gifted him with a great weapon that would be a prominent aid in defeating Cronus and the other Titans, the Thunderbolt. After their great victory, Zeus was established as ruler of the cosmos.
I haven't seen that.
Again, this was Hesiod's poetic tale, a tale that has been embellished and expanded upon by the likes of Callimachus, Euripides, and Virgil, who were mostly poets, and Apollodorus, a scholar who presented quite a different retelling of the whole. For instance, the detail mentioned earlier of the Cyclopes working under Hephaestus was an addition made by both Apollodorus and Callimachus. The mentioning of the monster Campi was most likely Apollodorus, and the Mount Etna distinction probably came into being when these and later poets began merging sources from Homer's and Hesiod's tales. This is akin to how in the 80s you would have read a Marvel comic that would later go on to be transformed into a motion picture with some lore modifications, and then that depiction being further modified into a movie that you may have seen recently. Even this production will be remade or may influence a future reiteration which will continue.
I finally wait to kill the Cross the Spider-Verse. I mean, the Into the Spider-Verse 2. I think it's coming soon in theaters, though.
So let's continue with this hybrid of a story now influenced by several persons over a frame of roughly 200 to 300 years. Let's find out how the Cyclopes story was ended. We'll backtrack a little to Mount Etna, where the monster Campi stood guard. Same as presented earlier, due to his mother tricking Cronus into swallowing a rock instead, Zeus survived, hidden away until he was ready to overthrow his father. He destroyed the Campi, releasing the Cyclopes and their Hecatoncheir brethren. In return, the One-Eyed Brothers forged thunderbolts for Zeus, a trident for Poseidon, notably known as God of the Seas, for the ruler of the underworld Hades, the Helm of Invisibility, and more such as arrows, bow, and quiver for Artemis, the hunter goddess, all of which was used to defeat Cronus and the Titans. They also created an altar for the gods, which today can be seen as the constellation of Era and the great Cyclopean walls that I'll cover more in a bit. Still the Cyclopes have not earned their break, for soon after came Asclepius, Apollo's son, who knew the deepest secrets of healing. Zeus, fearing he would reveal the mysteries of resurrection to the humans, struck him down with lightning. In infuriated retaliation, Apollo unjustly slew the Cyclopes, for they were the ones that had fashioned the lightning bolts. And for this, Zeus banished Apollo, his son, from Olympus to serve a mortal at his home England. And so ends the tale of the three Cyclopes of Hesiod's writings. Let's see if Homer's were offered a better fate. Before jumping into today's relevant portion of the Odyssey, let's introduce these Cyclopes and Cyclops of interest with a prologue written some 300 years later by Philoxenus of Cythera. The monocular humanoids here are a race described as unintelligent, vicious, full of pride, who continually plundered their neighbor.
Hey, there's giants coming by.
These giants share a similar description to those of Diogony, apart from being incredibly gifted craftsmen and, well, much less godly, as they lived within the realm of humans. Roaming within the caves of Sicily upon steep mountains, they lived a savage life of disorder, exercising no fear of the gods as they saw themselves above them. Hierarchy was present within families where the male dominated, and thus perhaps upon the lands where the bigger and stronger ruled territories. That's just my observational suggestion.
Why are they supposed to do this?
They still had certain respect for the belongings of one another. They had no skills in particular and relied on the land to supply them with wheat, barley, vines of wine, and the land very generously did. But there was one among them that was different, that herded his own sheep and lived apart from the others. Poseidon's son, Polyphemus, was the most famed monstrosity here. Polyphemus was a towering gobbler of men who had fallen in love with the most beautiful sea nymph, like his mother, Galatea. She, on the other hand, was lovers with Acis, the son of a nymph and famous faun. When Polyphemus discovered them together, he crushed Acis with a boulder. In her sorrow, Galatea turned the streams of her lover's blood into the Sicilian river Acis. And so in Heartache, this telling ends. And albeit a much newer lore edition, it nicely segues to
Yep.
possibly the most famous
Still
story
a little bit
of the
action.
Cyclops. A work
But
of
at
Homer.
least it did
One day,
a
while
bit of
Polyphemus was out and about,
Smarter.
a ship arrived with a group of men,
I
the
have the
leader
reason
among
I
them,
take it too.
Odysseus, a growing legend at this time. In their innocent ignorance, they found shelter in a large cave abundant with food. Upon finding the intruders, Polyphemus sealed the entrance to his home with a huge boulder, trapping the sailors and thereafter eating a few of them. Overnight, Odysseus came up with a plan to get the Cyclops too drunk to stay on his feet, making his precious eye reachable. He offered the Cyclops some wine, which the giant never
still
had
it's got a
before.
little bit
Odysseus
eye, huh?
observed the foolishness of the monster
Well,
as they proceeded to chat. When Polyphemus asked for the leader's name,
still it's a little bit
Odysseus
asking,
replied,
though.
nobody. For the wine, Polyphemus promised to eat Odysseus last and finally fell asleep in his inebriated state. The warrior then found a wooden stake that he hardened and shaped in a fire and thrusted it into the Cyclops' eye, blinding him. When Polyphemus cried for help, the other Cyclopes arrived and soon left when he yelled to them from within his cave that nobody had tricked him and that nobody had attacked him.
Still a
After a
little bit
while, when
hard.
Polyphemus finally decided to release
still
his
got
sheep
a heart.
to graze, unknowingly he freed his human captives as well, as the men had fastened themselves to the bellies of the animals, avoiding any of the above inspections by the giant's hands. Odysseus, in a moment of pride over their victory,
Well,
revealed his
did I
true
need to
name
get
to
a
the
victory
Cyclops
coming
when
body
upon
to
the
the
ship.
last
Father
shot?
Poseidon, hearing his son's curses, was
Yep,
not at
still
all
a little bit
pleased
action.
with this, and thus a decade-long grudge against Odysseus began, complicating the hero's voyage home much more. The men barely escaped as stones hit the waters around them from the powerful hurls of the furious giant. You can
Yep.
imagine where the inspiration for being named the Cyclopean
Well, I think
Islands
it's a
came
little
from.
bit
For these
better.
islands upon eastern
Well,
Sicily's
who's next
coast,
coming
other
your
writers
side,
created more
isn't it?
original tales, while some merged the worlds of the ones
I have no
mentioned
reason
earlier,
about this,
making Sicily
but
the
still
island
is a little
home
bit
for
high.
both the
But here it
Cyclopes of
goes.
Hesiod and
I know
of
it's
Homer.
always
The
an eye.
landscape and the surrounding sea conveniently fit the tales, creating a pleasant, distant home for all of
Well,
the
that was
molecular
exactly.
giants. The primordial cycloptic masons were
But look
also
how it
believed to
goes.
have built the burly cyclopean walls of
Yep,
Terence,
that's the
Messenia,
Cyclopean
and
walls.
Argos. They were assembled
But
from
even though
stacks of stones.
I'm not a
many of
monster, I'm
which
an
were
alien.
Much too heavy for one or four men to lift.
Well, very
Dating
good.
possibly as far back
I
as
have
2000
no
BCE, there isn't too much
options about
cyclopean
this
lore
place.
surrounding them, and the structures
I
remain
have
somewhat
no
a mystery
choice
to this
about
day,
this.
especially when comparing the newer build styles to those of the
Nobody's
Incas
to
of
be
faraway
quiet in
South
that
America.
side.
The internet is full of flawed
Upstairs
information
not
on these
working.
topics, and while I try to filter in the best facts into the correct context, it is very time-consuming and tricky. One just
Well,
doesn't
that's a little
find
bit tricky.
information on a Greek
But that's
monster,
usually
but
good
rather
done.
finds themselves soon to be a
Look
student
how
of
the
the
Cyclops
intricacies
idiots
of Greek
stop
mythology
motion.
and literature. Even though the terms Cyclops and Cycloptic have become synonymous with describing a being as having a single eye, this is where our presentation of the history of the actual Cyclops conception nears closing. For there are many one-eyed monsters that have inhabited various folklore since ancient times, and they each deserve their own deep dive into. Here are just a few that may pique your interest. Not long after the creations of Homer and Hesiod, the Arimaspi, a Scythian tribe of one-eyed people that battled griffins, arose from the poetry of Aristaeus. From Irish mythology,
that's the
spawned
lady he's
Balor,
talking
a
to.
malevolent giant with one massive eye that brought upon
Yep.
destruction when opened.
Still
would
is
be
a little
great
bit
alias
action.
for Marvel's Cyclops. This
Yep,
one-eyed
Balor.
Canodi were a mythical race of people with enormous ears found in Scythia. From Japanese mythology, we get a good number of supernatural cycloptic yokais. Hitatsumi Nya,
Yup.
Hitatsumi Hozo,
That's what, like, Boy Clops
Hitatsumi
from
Ba,
Yokai
and the
Watch.
very strange Ippondatara, to name a few. With an honorable mention to Shirime.
Man,
Don't worry.
that
Aaron.
was an eye
Somewhere.
on that action.
And from the Philippines, the Bungisungis.
Oh, no.
In short, the giggling Cyclops with the interesting
That's a
detail
cool
of possessing
Japanese
tusks,
monster.
which could make a lot of sense as we round our way back to the monoculi term on this very old map. of Africa.
I thought so.
Among the more famed notions of how the Cyclops and possibly other single-eyed humanoids came into
have
human
no
belief,
reason
we
to
find the elephant skull theory. In his 1914 publication, Die Tiere der Vorwelt, Austrian paleontologist Othniel Abel discusses how elephant skulls in Sicily may have been misconstrued as those of Cyclopes, elephants in Italy, one might ask. Yes, but not those of the New World species, but of a prehistoric type known as the Sicilian dwarf elephant, whose many a fossil had been discovered in the caves of Sicily. Upon inspection of the skull fossil, such as with most proboscideans, one will find a huge cavity at the center area of the skull. That, as proposed by Othniel to the layman, could appear as if it were a socket for a large eye, when in fact it was where the elephant's trunk connected. While some scholars deny that ancient Greeks fathomed this belief upon finding the skulls, or that they even found them, it does hold some merit when just earlier I mentioned the monoculi
This is like a giant eye.
the land of the largest elephants alive today. How about the tusked Ungisingis of the Philippines, where Asian elephants weren't introduced until at least the 16th century, but thousands to millions of years prior to that, Stegodon luzonensis roamed the lands, leaving the mysterious fossils behind. It's a solid theory, but let's take a quick gander at what other possibilities there were. The cycloptic blacksmith relation is often brought up as an inspiration by actual blacksmith who wore an eye patch in case one eye got injured with the spark.
That's
the
sort of
other
like a
remained healthy
pirate.
and operational. A rational approach and in combination with the
But an eye
elephant
patch
skulls
is sort of
a
like a
solid basis
pirate.
for the birth of a monster.
But who cares
Cyclopia,
about
a
the
word that would ring a bell here for any teratologist, is a congenital disorder where the forebrain doesn't properly develop.
Still
with
a little bit
single
facts
area
coming
for the
through.
eyes rather than two, even though it is highly uncommon and as an abnormality inconsistent in appearance. Accounts of it span hundreds of years. The possibility of one living alone
Yup,
to
that's a one-eyed
adulthood
puppy. That's
having
the
this
rare
disorder
one.
sometime in our history is barely believable. But an
I
entire
have
family
barely
or group
watched
of people?
this.
Again, not likely, as cyclopia occurs in about 1 in 100,000 newborns, most of them stillborn and the others passing away soon after. Could these defects have been more common in a particular area at a particular time? In short, yes. The native to Italy and other
that's
parts
sort
of
of like
Europe,
a freak
hellebore, was an herb sparingly used to induce regurgitation. It was found that upon ingestion in greater amounts, it could cause physical defects in grazing animals and in humans, one of which was Cyclopia. Therefore, in archaic times, numerous miscarried human and animal babies with a deformed face and merging or merged eye socket could have stimulated or further supported an opinion that this was supernatural in nature and possibly the work of the gods. And then we have the ancient aliens theory, which would have most likely involved some major organized cover-up. Possible? Sure, but to our knowledge, not very much so. And peering over our living monoculous skull of World of Monsters, I'd like to give a shout out to Max Zero, who was the original creator of the sculpt behind this inspiration. You can find him all over the place like
skull.
Facebook and Instagram, but I
That's the
recommend
rare
you delve
one.
into his brilliant work on his Etsy
Oh,
page. He's
boy.
truly a very skilled, creative individual. Thanks, Mixaro. Now, maybe more important than trying to figure out who or what inspired the Cyclops in the Greeks are the lessons and symbolism entwined within the poems of antiquity. In Homer's telling, the Cyclopes had no manners. When greeted by strangers in his home, Polyphemus did not receive them kindly and offer them comfort, as was the Greek custom, for one never knew if a stranger about was a god in disguise. The Cyclopes had no respect for Zeus and the gods, and so were looked upon as savage and uncivilized, something no one wanted to be called. No one wanted to be compared to the likes of the Cyclops. The representation of the one-eyed beasts may also be a figment of who we are. As Edward Sylvia, philosopher, explores, it could be the self-centered, narrow-minded part within us that limits our vision of self. The limitation of having one eye, seeing things only one way and not allowing oneself to perceive themselves from other viewpoints. An interesting approach to keep in mind when delving into the various sides of Greek mythology. As with the Cyclopean walls, the giants were also associated with megalithic observatories, constructed to help measure the movement of the celestial bodies. Therefore, maybe there was some relationship between the single eye and the visual portal of the telescope. Hesiod's representation
Yep.
of the monsters was, in a way, almost opposite
Yep.
to that of Homer's, as
That's
their
the
description can
telescope
more
of an
easily
eye.
be associated with the Cyclopean walls, for these primordial Cyclopes were expert craftsmen, understandably enormous in size, for they were gods. And as in
Yup,
Egypt,
but this isn't
figures of such
Halloween.
importance
But
were
this
always
is the
depicted
month
as
about
bigger
the
than
monsters
any
for
mere
this
mortal.
year.
Why then were the Cyclopes of Homer gigantic?
Do I
Was it
recognize
because of the
the
discovery
great
of the
monster
elephant
here?
fossils that outmeasured anything human? Or was Homer's poem, in fact, influenced by Hesiod's,
Yeah,
proving
I have
who was
reason about
indeed
this.
first to tell an undying tale of the Cyclops monstrosity? So many factors could have inspired and brought forth the Cyclops. It could have been as simple as a deformed fetus or story convenience, or the amalgamation of older Sumerian tales combined with strange fossils and architectural findings. Whatever the case, simplistic at creation as the Cyclops may be, it is truly a fascinating monster and entirely worthy of its fame. Also worthy of their fame are these blessed individuals of Patreon who greatly help me get through everything necessary to get these videos out to you. Thank you, Cloud, Kristian, Dante, Rain, Ramin, Rihanna, Tammy, Toby. Thank you all. Monsterites, please like for the efforts, and if you're not a Monsterite, then subscribe right now. And if you want to see what other strange stuff I'll be covering soon, be sure to click that bell button. It's supposed to help. But if you can't wait and you enjoyed learning about the Cyclops, you may want to watch this video where I cover pretty much everything one can about the Gorgons, you know, like Medusa. Also, here is a video hosted by Dogdanza explaining what the Japanese yokai are, in case you were wondering during that earlier mention. If you're interested in monsters from movies or even video games, then you're almost in the right place, as we've got all that covered on our channel too. Just head over to our channel page and get wild. And if you'd like to sponsor a Bigfoot family threatened by hunters, join our Patreon. And remember, as always, links to the concept arts in the video will be in the description. I have been and will continue to be Monster Master Arthur. See you in the next one.
Well, that's about the month about Cyclopses. But join us again next month for another monster. But this monster is different.
Alright, thanks for watching.